What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. Today I have a special guest. I've known this guy for about 4 years now. He saw me when I wasn't an entrepreneur all the way to the point that I'm at now. Amazing guy, knows a lot about entrepreneurship, has an amazing story. His name's Rios, so make sure you tune in, stay the whole episode, and let me know what you think in the comments below.
And when I would coach people in marriage, what they wanted a quick solution for right now. Let's fix it right now. But I'm like, but that's not going to change. So we focused on habits, building new habits. We call them pre-planned behaviors in everything that you do in regards to your relationship. And that was the one thing that changed the whole dynamic. So I learned this from having 2 failed marriages. I'm like, well, fuck, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And I've been with my wife for 19 years now. But the one thing we learned was if I plan my behaviors, it's so much easier than to just let them be spontaneous behaviors.
Okay, so let me give you an example. And you tell me if this is what you're getting to. So I had a buddy. He said, oh, yeah, every single day I write down on my calendar, I'm going to tell my girlfriend I love her at 2:30 p.m. Just like a quick reminder. And then I told Ashley about that. And I was like, yeah, this is what this person said. And she was like, oh, my gosh, I think that's so dumb. I'd be pissed off at you if you did that.
So what is it doing? It's teaching you how to be a certain person. It's teaching you to be habitual in your behavior. So we know that 95% of our behaviors are all habitual. They're subconscious behaviors. They're just habitual. You don't think about it. When you get in a car, do you think about backing up? You just back up. You don't think. But when you first started driving, what did you do? You were so conscious of everything. You have your conscious and you have your subconscious. Your subconscious is driving the boat all the time. In your marriage, it's the exact same thing. So why wouldn't you want to have something that you could think about? When I get off work, I'm going to walk in the door. I'm going to give my wife a hug. I'm going to give my wife a kiss. I'm going to tell her I love her. And, and you teach yourself to respond versus react. Be responsible. Being a responsive person is you're planning your behaviors ahead of time. I did this for a long, and I studied, and I had a whole list of who I wanted to become. So I thought, who do I want to be as a man? Who do I want to be as a husband? Who do I want to be as a father? And how do I want those things to look? So I would ask people, I'm like, well, what kind of marriage do you want? Well, I want a good marriage. Well, great. What's a good marriage? They would never take the time to think through the process, because what you think is a good marriage, I may think is a horrible marriage. What I think is a good marriage, you may think is a horrible marriage. So we had to define what it is for each person. So the idea is create pre-planned behaviors that create habits that you do daily, just like that. So my wife and I, every single night we go to bed together. We have been together for 19 years, and I can tell you the only time we didn't go to bed together was probably 4 times, unless we were out of town from each other.
Right.
But we go to bed every single night. It's a habit. Every single night before we go to bed, it's the exact same thing that happens. She says, give me a kiss. I'm like, do I got to really do it? Serious? Again? Said I kissed you already today. Because she knows I'm going to do it, but I'm just going to play it. Because I always play it. She goes, get your ass over and give me a kiss now. So I roll over, I give her a kiss. And then it's like, roll over. I told her, roll over. I said, and I slap her on the shoulder. I said, back up. And then we snuggle. It's every night it's the same process.
Yeah.
But it's a fun thing that we do. Every single morning we get up at around the same time. Our whole life revolves around specific habits that allow us to have a great relationship. But I designed those habits based on one factor, pre-planned behaviors. I always want to, so when my wife says this, I'll say this. So think about this. If you don't like the reaction you got, what do you think you should do? Change the action you used. Look for a different action. But you don't think about that in the moment, do you? You never think about it in the moment. But what if you pre-plan those behaviors? So think about a professional athlete. What do? They practice what? Every single day. The same thing over and over and over. So when that guy writes this down, I'm going to tell my wife, call my wife, tell her I love her at 2:30. What's he doing? He's learning to be a professional athlete in his marriage. That's the best part about that. Because, dude, he's planning how to be who he wants to be. Now, remember this. Anything you do because it's what you want to do, not because you're doing it for her. You're not doing this for her. You're doing it because you want to become the best version of yourself. And for me to be the best version of myself, I need to be a loving guy who's caring, who's kind, who supports my wife, who holds her up, who defends her, who does all these different things and make sure that she always feels better. Now, what if you woke up every single day and you said to yourself this one thing? What can I do today to make my marriage better than it was yesterday? And you live by that one principle. But what if your whole life was revolved around that one principle? What can I do today to make my life better today? Not just your marriage, but your whole life better today. My business better. So most people, when you look at in business, I was talking to a couple, it was fucking chaos, dude. I mean, he was in business. She was not in the business. She was the second wife. He would not ever share with business with her what was going on, what wasn't going on. And it was just total fucking confusion. He treated his business like his playground, his gold mine. He treated his wife like she was something beyond that, below that. What the fuck, dude? If you treated your wife like you did your business, I guarantee you'd have the best marriage in the whole fucking world. Do you not agree?
No, 100%.
I mean, it's just fucking reality, dude. Business is the same thing. No matter what it is in life that you want, nothing gets better until you get better. If you want a better life, learn to become a better you. If you want to be a better leader, learn to become a better leader. If you want to be a better business, learn to become a better business owner through mentorships. So you are 24 years old, right, Kyle?
23.
23. I'm 52. I've been in business since 2008. You've been in business for 4 years. You know so many things that I don't know. When we look at business, we have to look at it from the perspective that everybody knows something that you don't know. I know so many things that you don't know. But can you learn all these things? 100%. But can I help shorten your learning curve? 100%. Because when you first went into business, the first thing I told you, Kyle, don't be focused on revenue, be focused on profits. Revenue doesn't mean shit. What means something are profits, what you get to keep at the end of the day.
So I always tell the story. I went to your house one time because I hung out with your daughters, basically.
I know, right?
And I said, I just started my junk removal company and I did my first $10,000 week. And I said, hey, Eric, I did my first $10,000 week. And I thought I was a straight stud. I thought I was killing the game. And you said, yeah, how much did you profit? And I was like, I didn't even know how to answer it. I didn't know if it was $2,000, $8,000, $5,000. And from that moment on, I was like, hey, I need to make sure that I know my profits down to a T, because that's really the only thing that moves the needle in your life. It's the only thing that stays in your bank account. Most people are so focused on the numbers, the revenue, which I was for a long time, when I'd rather be the business that's doing $100K a month profit, instead of the business that's doing $1 million a month in revenue that's profiting, 20 grand.
Right.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Profits mean everything. But what did you do that most people don't do? What was the one difference about you? And now I've always told you one thing, right? Kyle, you're going to be a millionaire. I've told you this all along. I said, Kyle, you're going to fucking be a millionaire, because I knew you were going to do things differently. Most people never do what you did, which is start paying attention to the numbers. They just keep going. I talked to a guy in California. He was owned a plumbing company doing $4 million a year, losing $20,000 a month. That's a fucking problem when you look at it. That's huge, dude. You cannot stay in business that way. The one thing you did differently is you said, look, I got to focus on profits. What did you do? You changed your whole mindset to one thing. Where are we making money? Am I making money? Am I not making it? If I'm not making money, I'm going to shift this to here, shift this to there. But remember this. You did great, dude. $10,000 in a week as a 21-year-old kid? 20-year-old kid?
Yeah.
Dude, how many fuckers do you know who do that?
Nobody.
Very few, dude. Very few. I mean, very few. That's the point, is you did something that most people are not willing to do. They're scared to do it. So what did you do? The time is now. What does the back of my shirt say? What does this say, Kyle? Read that to me. What does it say?
I took a chance on myself.
What did you do?
I took a chance on myself.
You took a chance on yourself.
Yeah, my answer was going to be I took action, which most people, like I talked to a guy literally yesterday, and he was looking to transition from lawn care to landscape construction to tree work to junk removal. And then once I mentioned what I was doing with social media, he's like, yeah, I was actually trying to do that too. Right? To where he looked at me, who was actually doing these things that he wanted to do, which he probably knew he had the knowledge of doing. He just knew that he needed to do it. But for some odd reason, he didn't take action on those things. And then now he's looking at me like, oh, this is probably where I could be. For example, a lot of people don't post social media content. Why is that? Because they're so scared of what people are going to think of them. And you just have to do it, and you can't focus on what people say. You can't focus on the numbers. You just have to get the content out there.
And the content's there to serve. You shouldn't do it for the likes or for the, for getting recognition. You should do it because you really want to serve and help people. The content is built around that. And I understand what it is to feel like, I don't know enough to post. I didn't know what to do, how to do it, how the right stuff to do, and this and this. And I've talked to you hundreds of times about this. I'm like, Kyle, what do I do? How do I do this? And you're like, dude, just fucking do it. Just start posting shit. I mean, that's the reality of what we do, is we do become scared. You can do all the right things in your life, but when you try something new, it's always a little scary. And I did a post the other day, and I talked about, the quickest way to get through fear is just to run right into it. Is just to really run right into it and run through it and just go. And you're going to realize it's going to free you in ways you can't imagine. But what you don't realize is there's going to be another barrier that's going to come up as well, and another one. But we go back to habits. pre-trained behaviors, pre-trained habits. We're training ourselves to go through these barriers. And every time you do get to another one, it's just a little bit easier.
Yeah, the first barrier is actually getting over that hump. Hey, I'm going to start posting social media content. And then people do it, right? They get over that massive fear, which took so much time, and they start posting content and they see their videos get 27 views, 200 views here, and they say it doesn't work, or they lose, they lose that motivation to continue to go, and then they just give up when there's a million other barriers that you're going to face. The first video I posted on social media, I filmed probably 45 videos at least, right? And I had to go through my camera roll for 20 minutes probably to delete all these videos. And I was trying to make it so perfect. If my hair was messed up, if I stuttered, I had to delete it. And then I got to the end and I was like, why do I care? I want this to be raw, kind of like what we talked about. I don't want to have to, like, when you tell people to post content, they will go shoot a video and it's going to take them an hour to shoot that one video, which is why they're never going to end up actually building their brand, where you have to sit down, you got to shoot the content, boom, 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 and it really takes no time whatsoever.
Because business is not perfect. Life is not perfect. So why try to make everything else perfect? Because what happens is you tend to not. Now, it's a good thing to strive for, to be better. But if you're always waiting for it to be perfect, you're never going to do it. You're never going to do it. You're always going to be just stuck on that starting line, like, ooh, what do I do? What do I say? What do I do? What do I say? Like, when I decided to shoot my course, I shot 48 videos in 2 days. People were like, you did what? I'm like, I just decided to do it. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to, none of them are going to be perfect, but they're all phenomenal information. It's what it is. It's a great, and I know when you did it, you shot maybe a heck of a lot more videos in 2 or 3 days. But the point is you did it. That's the difference. And once you get through that barrier once, it changes everything. And once you realize that people are going to dislike what you do, they're going to think you post too much, they're going to think you do too much, they're going to think that you're like, oh my God, here's another one from fucking Kyle, here's another one from Eric, here's another one, like, what the fuck? I mean, seriously, dude, it's like, just, who gives a shit? I mean, I was listening to Gary Vaynerchuk the other day, he's like, dude, stop giving a shit what everybody else thinks. Just start being you, live you. I mean...
So I want to dive deep on that, right? Because you have a lot of experience, which I want to dive into your story as well. But you just mentioned that you basically packaged your knowledge together to start a coaching program, is what it sounds like, or you're going to help other people.
Sure.
When there's a lot of very successful people out there that do 5 million a year, 100 million a year, and they're like, oh, I don't have it figured out yet. That's why I'm not a coach. So tell me why you got into that industry of the education space.
Well, that's pretty easy for me. So I never went to high school. I mean, I've actually never went to high school. Never been to high school for one day. The only time I ever went to high school was I was working in a school and I sat in a high school class while we were waiting on the science teacher to finish. That's the only time I've ever actually been to high school. I never went to college. So I learned everything the hard way. I was very intelligent as a young man, but I just didn't like school at that time in my life. So when I realized that learning is going to be one of the most important, most valuable things that I could do, I changed my whole mindset, my whole thinking. So when I decided that, hey, I need to be better, I need to stop being a loser, I need to stop living my life as a nobody and become a better me, books became my life. Education became my life. So then when people tell me that they can't do something, I don't give them a lot of excuses. I'm like, dude, I sold pizzas door to door in Compton, California. I was knocking on doors, selling ready-to-eat pizzas for $5 a piece. Just knocking on doors, bars on all the windows. People are like, you're fucking crazy, dude. You're going to get yourself killed out here. I'm like, I didn't care. I needed money because I lived in California then. I was working as a welder. And I was laid off 14 times. I mean, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. So I would deliver newspapers, sell pizzas. I didn't give a crap what it was. I did everything I had to do to succeed and to find a way in my life. Nobody gets excuses with me. When they say they can't do it, I'm like, dude, you're full of shit. You can do it. Well, I wouldn't do it. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you do it? I've done everything under the sun that's horrible. But I did it because it was just a stepping stone to get to the next place. So education for me is the most important thing. If I can teach you how to do something in a short amount of time to encourage you, to build your confidence, to make you believe things about yourself that you never thought you could believe, to me, that's gold. The other day, I talked to a guy for 5 minutes. He's been beating around the bush starting a business. He's like, man, I don't know what to do. And I mean, I'm just like, this guy is a retired military. I think he was a major in the military. And I'm myself when I talk to you. I don't care if I know you or not. I'm going to be myself. And I asked this guy straight up. I said, well, what do you want to do? He goes, well, if I could do anything, I'd probably start an Anytime Fitness. I said, so why the fuck haven't you done it? He's like, I don't know. I said, have you called the franchise consultant and set up an appointment to talk to them and do this and this and this and this and that? No. I said, so do it now. I said, hang up the phone and do it right now. And in 5 minutes, he did all those things. He called, he sent me a message. Hey man, I just scheduled my meeting. I'm going to meet with him about this because this is what he wanted to do, was to serve people. But educating them on how to become better, on pushing them to be better, pushing them to be more, is to me the most valuable thing you could ever do for somebody, is to teach them that their life can be more than what they ever dreamed. And that's through what I've done myself. But I've also, Kyle, I've spent a lot of money on mentorships. I've spent a lot of money on learning. I needed to learn to become the best version of myself before I could help you become the best version of yourself. There's always going to be someone who's better than you. There's always going to be someone who makes a lot more money than you. There's always going to be someone who is the upper echelon, because I was stuck there like anybody else. I was like, well, I kept comparing myself. Well, maybe I need to start another business. Maybe I need to start another business. Maybe I don't know enough. Maybe I don't know enough. It was that whole mindset of like, I'm just not good enough yet. So I just kept duplicating. And I realized I am good enough. I mean, it's a no-brainer to me. And you start comparing yourself to other people. So therefore you don't take action and educate people. So people lose out because you're afraid to do what you should do for their lives. That's the problem.
And that's why it's so important to have those people that are in your corner that are actually doing it, right? Because that guy, look at all of his friends probably. He's probably not going to his friends saying, hey, I'm looking to start this Anytime Fitness, because they're not, they're probably not like, hey, you need to call him right now. That was probably the first time he's ever heard of that. That's why he ended up calling them.
Right.
When I've invested money into masterminds and stuff like that, just to learn the social media space, they tell me, hey, this is what you need to do. Just do it. You document the process. Don't create content. They gave me the direction that makes me who I am today, but the hard part is actually taking action. So I want to dive deeper into your story so people know exactly who you are a little bit. So, I didn't even know that you lived in California, by the way. So take me back, I guess, maybe after high school, and where you went after you dropped out of high school.
All right, so I grew up in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I left there when I was 17 years old. So I dropped out of school when I was 15 years old. I lived in the state of Texas at that time. And we went to one semester of ninth grade. Now, ninth grade in Texas at that time was not part of high school. It's still junior high. So that's why I say I've never been to high school, because it was still junior high. With that one semester, I did really good. I made straight Fs every single class. I was suspended 5 times, chased by the cops 5 times, and went to jail once. All in one whole semester. I did really good. I mean, really, I didn't do good. But in 8th grade, I was even better than that. I had to, so smart, I did 8th grade twice. And so they tested my IQ in 8th grade. They're like, what is wrong with this guy? Why does he do so bad in school? Now, I was fucking hyper. I mean, I'm already a hyper guy. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't drink caffeine. I am just naturally a high energy guy. But in 8th grade, I had a college level IQ. For whatever reason, I didn't connect with school and teaching and how it was taught and all those different things. So then when I was 15, we moved back to Oklahoma. Then, of course, I kept getting in trouble. And then I ended up moving to California because my mom, she was gone most of the time. So I moved to California when I was 17. I was working at Burger King, got on a bus, a Greyhound bus, and took a 35-hour trip. It was a long trip because usually if you drive, it's a lot shorter. But if you get on a bus, well, there's a lot of stops. Got to California, in Bakersfield, California. I lived there for 5 years. Got married at 18 years old. And what an adventure. What an adventure.
So have you been married 3 times?
3 times.
Okay.
Yeah, 7
I didn't
times.
even know you had that first marriage either.
7. That's where my boys come from. So we had 3 boys, and I ended up getting custody of my boys, raising my boys. Their mom's a great lady. It just worked out where I ended up getting custody. But it was one of those things to where living out there, I was young, had no direction, 18 years old. My mom left again, and she moved to another state and with her job, and I stayed there. I went to welding school. Then the life happened, laid off 14 times in 4 years. It was tough to build a life. And I didn't know anything. I didn't have any education. I didn't have any formal education. I was smart. I could communicate. I could talk. I could lie my way into any job there was. But keeping a job was harder because, you're the low man on the totem pole. And the industry at that time was just really just an up and down industry in the oil fields and just the kinds of things that I did.
So then you ended up going into plumbing. I know that was your first company, correct?
Well, I went into newspapers before that.
Okay.
I was working as a welder delivering newspapers. I worked as a welder throughout the day, and I was up at 4 o'clock every single morning throwing papers. It was so much fun. I had the most fun ever. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but you know the video game Paperboy? Did you ever play that video game?
No.
No? Oh my God, it's such a great video game. You can get it on like some of the, I don't know, some of the game stations that you can play on. But like so we would literally throw papers. We make them like frisbee. We flatten them. They're like frisbees. We're flying down the road doing 45, 50 miles an hour, just chunking papers. Your goal was to hit planters off the porch. I mean, when you're young, you have some dumb goals. I mean, but we had a blast. So, but I worked for the newspaper. So then I ended up taking a job. It was a Tulsa World newspaper. I was working delivering papers. Then I took a job as a assistant district manager. So then I was delivering newspapers or working for the newspaper. Then I was delivering pizzas as well at this time too. I always did whatever I had to do to make things work. So now I'm doing three, just like when I would go to work on Saturday, I would go to work at probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I wouldn't get home till 3 o'clock the next day. It was just always just go, 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 go.
So
go.
what gives you that hustle? Because most people, they're so unmotivated that they don't care about money because they don't want to put the work in. They'll want to continue. They hate their jobs. You were putting the work in every single day, working multiple different jobs. For me, what made me so motivated was, unfortunately, I like, very material type stuff, watches, cars. I always talk about this. So for you, what was that driving force for you to go hustle?
Well, I've always been a worker. So this goes back to 6, 7 years old when I'm mowing lawns. I had my first job selling as a salesman when I was 14 years old. I was selling fruit, bushels of fruit, door to door. Knock on a door, try to sell them a bushel of fruit. The guy who hired me was 25 years old. He goes, Eric, you're one of the best salesmen I've ever hired at 14 years old. I loved sales. Everything revolved around sales. Then I took another sales job when I was 6. Well, I took a job as a dishwasher when I was 15, working for Garfield's Restaurant and Pub. And it was a fun job. It was fun, but I was just so immature. I quit on a Saturday night rush, but I was making money. And I pissed them off really bad. You'll never get a review from us. You never. I mean, they were so mad because I was really good as a dishwasher. I was fast. I was good. Then I took a job working in sales, selling vacations over the phone. And it was fun. But I did it until I got paid. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go to something different. And then, of course, when I got into fast food, worked for Wendy's, Little Caesars, Burger King. And I just always found a way to work and to make money. But when I got married at 18 years old, I had a kid by the time I was 19. I mean, so I had responsibilities. So the driving force for me was my responsibilities. My responsibilities were my number one thing, no matter what. I had to absolutely make money because the wife, she didn't work at the time. It was just I was a sole provider, so I didn't give a shit what it took. I was going to make money. I was going to find a way to make money, to keep food on the table. Because I mean, was it easy? Hell no, it wasn't easy. I can tell you a time when we used to go to church, and this will blow your mind. I was so poor, so broke. I mean, you're broke and you have to roll penny rolls to try to go buy something. That's when you know you're broke. I mean, it was but we had rent due, and I had a lot of faith, but I remember I'm like, I didn't have the money to pay rent, so I put a dollar bill in an envelope. I prayed over the envelope. I took it to the landlord's door, and I knocked on the door, dropped the envelope, and I took off running. I was hoping that it would turn into the whole rent. It was like I had so much faith and belief, but I had no other choice. I'm like, my landlord comes, he goes, dude, why didn't you just tell me? I would have worked and given you a couple extra weeks. But I'm like, I was so embarrassed. But I'm like, I tried something so fucking crazy that maybe, because you never, what if it worked? But I looked at the Bible, all these other great miracles happen, so why not my miracle? But it ended up becoming a fun story. But being broke and being poor, I was never poor-minded. I was just broke. It was just because I laid off 14 times. It was challenging.
I grew up very fortunate. I'll say, parents had good jobs, that sort of thing. But I almost think that if I didn't grow up as fortunate, and this might sound crazy, but if I grew up, we'll say in a terrible house, or maybe they weren't making that much money, I would probably be a lot more successful than I am right now because I haven't had it as bad as others. And when you look at these other people who maybe came from out of the country, right? And they came here, like Manny Koshbin, I don't know if you know him. Amazing story, living in his car, and now he's worth like 250 million maybe, and owns all this real estate. And all these people who ended up seeing very, very bad situations early on it gives them an amazing amount of drive to create this business, and they just keep going and going and going, where I almost wish I had that at times. But if I grew up in that, I probably wouldn't make that same decision
Well,
today.
it's not that, it's just that you don't know where your life would have gone. When you grow up in that environment where you're growing up with crime, drugs, and those kinds of things, your life can change so fast in a moment's notice. You don't ever know what your life's going to change into, because it's the influence of other people that's going to, and you have to ask yourself, how was I influenced by others, or was I influenced, or am I the influencer as you were being raised? Because I've seen the other side of the story where they're making, meth in the bathtubs. They're doing all the shit to do these kinds of things. This was my life as a teenager. I was around this whole. Now, I never got into drugs. I never liked drugs. Never liked alcohol. I mean, I liked smoking weed when I was a kid, but that was about it. I stopped doing that when I was probably 18 years old. But the thing is I know you think might have given you more drive, but it might have also killed your life. It might have also taken your life. It might have, because not a lot of people get to survive that and to leave that life. Because everybody I knew, they ended up going to jail, going to prison. It was just because you're influenced by so many wrong things. What changed me was an old lady, literally. An old lady invited me to go to church. My mom was working for a company in California, and her secretary's mom said, "Hey, Eric, why don't you come to church with me one day?" Went to church, and it changed my whole life. It changed my entire life that day forward. I was never the same person. And I've carried all those great things, about myself, who I am, since that day. Now, granted, I cuss, I say things, but to me, cuss words are just words. I just lose them as words because I've never used them in a derogatory way towards a person. They're just words to me. But it changed my life. So the motivation, everybody's motivated because there's a lot of people who grew up poor and they're still poor. They grew up broke and they're still broke. They grew up as doing nothing with their lives and they're still doing nothing with their lives. So sometimes it just doesn't change. I think what it is you either have a drive or you don't have a drive. And if I could activate your drive in you, that's what I want to do. So Coach Michael Burt, I paid this guy $25,000 for a day, to be personally coached by this guy. That's 6 hours. People think you're fucking crazy, dude. Why would you pay a guy that much? Because he's a guy doing tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars, owns his own private jet, owns this. He learned how to do something I don't know how to do. So I'm like, well, how can I learn to be a better me? So I hired this guy. So the one thing he teaches, this is his number one thing he teaches, is how to activate the prey drive in other people. Look him up, Coach Michael Burt. He teaches you how to activate your prey drive. Your prey drive is that drive that, if you go way back to when you had to survive off the land, that drive was going to drive you to get to where you want to be. So something activated your prey drive in you. You saw something one day that said, hey, I am going to do this no matter what. And because I remember you coming to my shop and you picking up stuff with you had your red pickup truck,
couches,
your trailer, and I'm just laughing at you, but you had your broken leg and
that's right.
And the thing is you came there and you still did it. You didn't find any excuse not to do the work. Something activated that prey drive in you for you to want to do more. Then one day you saw something. I don't know what it is you saw, but you saw something that said, whoa, I can be more. I don't just have to have a junk removal company. I can actually have this. I can have this. I can have this. I can have the whole fucking world if I want to. So what was it that activated that prey drive in you? What one thing did you see that said, I can do more, have more, be more?
I think money is just a tool at the end of the day, but money gives you some sort of power. You can do what you want. You can say what you want for the most part, to where I like that power of just being able to do what I want to do, right? If I was working a 9-to-5 job, I'd have to listen to everybody saying, hey, this is what I need you to do today. I'd be in the rat race, they call it, right? So I think it was a little bit of that, of the actual power itself of right now I can come here if I want to. If I need to cancel, I can cancel. I can do whatever I want. But also it's those, like, I want to live that movie star lifestyle. You watch a movie and it's like you see all these houses and just the way that they live, and like I want that, and I need that. And that was the initial. Actually, another thing is, in school, I was a big car guy back then. And I always had these cars, and I had to scrape money together. I'd make I made $7 an hour, and I had this Mustang that was a V6 Mustang. I thought I was so cool. And I look at all these other YouTubers, we'll say, that I would look up to that inspire me, and they have 25 cars, and they're all exotic. For me to go from that V6 Mustang to that V8 Mustang, I had to sell that V6 Mustang. The reason why is because I didn't have enough money. Still kind of in that position right now to where I have to sell something to go get that next thing when I want to collect. I don't, and money is the only thing that's holding me back from that thing. Or say you have a house, right? And you want to get a different house. Most people have to sell that house in order to go get that lake house or the mansion or whatever, when I just want to keep on building and have different options and go to where I want to go. And I don't want to have to go to places and look at a certain price tag, and I'm also surrounded around a lot of cheapskates, where I used to be this cheapskate, by the way. I would save 95% of my paychecks and live on, nothing. But the people that I'm surrounded with, right? If I go to a restaurant, for example, we actually stayed at your beach house,
Right.
and we went to that restaurant across the street. I can't think of what it was called. And one of my buddies that I was with, he was so fed up with spending so much money that he bought the cheapest thing on the menu was just a $6 soup. The true story.
I love
And
it.
I'm the type of guy, I want to get 3 appetizers and I want to get this and this because I just want to enjoy myself. When I look at people who can't spend that money or they care so much because of the money itself, it makes me want to have a lot of it so I don't have to do that. Another example, I went to Florida with my family, and they give you these wristbands that go around your wrist, obviously, and it shows if you're a resident there
Right,
or
at
you're
that
staying
resort,
there.
saying, sure.
And I was in the ocean and I was swimming, and the wave blew it off my wrist, and my family said, "Oh my gosh, that's $20. That's going to cost me $20." And I felt like it was such an issue, and I felt like it was like money. It was the end of the world because that wristband flew off. When it should be, who cares? And I don't want my family, will say, to live like that. I want to be able to give back and take my family on those vacations and give them anything that they could ever have dreamed of. So I feel like it's constant, just different situations that are a constant reminder for me. But there's things that are in my life as well that I know that you just went with Andy Elliott. I watched a video of him recently, and he was on the stage and he brought in maybe a client of his, and he said, "Take your shirt off." And
I saw that.
and the guy took his shirt off, and he had a dad bod, kind of like myself. I got a dad bod. Can't even remember the last time I went to the gym, to be honest with you.
I went
And
to
he
the
said,
gym this morning, baby. Look at
"There
them
you
guns.
go.
They're
I
growing,
could
baby.
tell.
Andy's he's coming on me, brother. They're growing.
I love
They're
it."
growing.
So he said, "How do you feel right now?" Probably not good, right? And he's like, "You, for some reason, don't want it bad enough," right? And there's many different things for me where I know I could work harder, where maybe I'm scrolling TikTok too long, or maybe I tell myself today, "Hey, I'm going to do 100 push-ups tomorrow." And for some reason, I don't do that because of the lack of discipline that I have on certain things, where constantly I have to tell myself, where can I find that? I want it bad enough. That's why I'm going to do these
Right.
things. So for you, I guess what makes you want it bad enough?
I don't like having a shitty life. I like being able to travel. I mean, I think now I'm not a very materialistic person. I never have been. I mean, it's just I've owned a couple Camaros. They were fun. I kept them for less than a year and I got rid of them. It's just like, I was done with it. That doesn't excite me. My pickup truck excites me. I know that sounds crazy, but it's an F-250 diesel, and I'll outrun you all day long in your Lamborghini, buddy, because I'll run you off the road if you get in my way.
I saw you 2 weeks ago, and I was in the Range Rover. I see you around the corner, and Ashley and the baby are in the car, so I can't go fast. I'm like, "Oh, that's Eric." And I just wanted to floor it by you or try to roll down the window, and you were going 90 miles an hour in that truck, probably living your life.
But I like simple. I've always said live simple so you can live large. I've never wanted to do like extravagant. I love traveling. So we've been to Hawaii 8 times. We've been to, since my wife, we've been together for 19 years. So we've been to the East Coast, the West Coast. We've owned three condos at the beach. We've done everything we've ever wanted to do. There's never been nothing we didn't get to do that we wanted to do. If I didn't have the money, I always figured out a way to make the money, because I know what it's like to live on the other side of the fence, and that fucking side of the fence sucks. I mean, seriously, it sucks. There's nothing good about being broke all the time when you know there's an opportunity to not be broke. But sometimes the vehicle you're in isn't the right vehicle to get you where you want to go.
So let's get into this. So you owned a couple plumbing companies, we'll say.
Yes.
And you built them up and sold them.
Yes.
Why should somebody, you probably had a dream of, hey, maybe I'm going to start a couple plumbing companies. I want to do, a couple $1 million a year or whatever. And as you're scaling this business up, you make a decision one day, hey, I'm going to sell this business. Why should somebody like I feel like it's okay to change directions because whatever you're constantly going to change your mind on different things. But you've sold multiple businesses. What made you sell those businesses and get back into the business? And was it worth it?
So I think first when I went into business the first time, so we go back to when I was in my 20s being laid off 14 times. It really scars you, makes you think a lot about your life. So I got into plumbing originally working in Dallas, Texas. My mom worked for a mechanical contractor, Brand Engineering, and phenomenal company. And I remember, I worked for 5 years there, moved to St. Louis, was working for a company. Then I used to always hear this, well, we might have to lay you off. We might have to lay you off. And I'm like, fuck, I don't want to go through that again. I just did not want to go through that pain of, here I'm broke, I got to get another job, I got to get another job. It was just horrible. I was good at what I did. The company I worked for here, they treated me like a king. But once again, when business is slow, they still have to let people go. So I'm just going to start my own company. So I didn't have a dream of like, I want to be this. I just wanted to start a business and control my own life. If I'm going to be laid off, I'm going to be laid off by myself. I'll lay myself off before I let anybody else lay me off ever again. So I started that first company and I wrote out a business plan. I read 2 books on how to start a business. This is why, you have a course, I have a course on how all the steps to start a business, grow a business, scale a business, everything under the sun. Same thing. But what I did is I read 2 books on how to start specifically a plumbing company. I'd worked in the trade for a long time. And I set my first year goal at like $100,000. Because I didn't know what to expect. I had never been in business. I didn't know what to do. So my first year I did like $365,000. Like, fuck yeah. I mean, it was the coolest thing in the world, dude. Because to me, I'm like, I did really, really good. Then my next year we were at had $500,000. Then next year we were a little over $500,000. Then I decided, okay, well, I'm stuck. What do I do? I need to learn something because my skill level was here, but in order for me to grow, my skill level needed to be there. It needed to be much higher. So what I did was I hired a business coach. I spent $25,000 hiring a business coach. But for that one $25,000 investment, I generated an additional $500,000 that year. So I hit, $1 million the day before Thanksgiving in 2012. Only 5% of businesses ever do $1 million. Between 5 and 9%. I know people say different, but the point is that's huge for someone who's never been to high school. It's huge for anybody who goes into business because most of them they never get to that mark. And then we just kept growing each year. And then I sold the company. So once I sold the company, I always had the idea I want to build it to sell it, build it to sell it. That was my whole purpose. And I'm like, well, what do I do? So then I was going to buy an insurance agency. So I started looking at the numbers and I was going to buy one from a local company here and a big brand. And I won't share the name. But they wanted me to buy the debt to that insurance agent. I'm like, yep, I'm not buying the debt. So the one thing I learned from selling a business is you never buy debt. And selling a business is probably the hardest thing you'll ever go through. I mean, you've done it. Because it's like the most secretive thing in the whole world. None of your employees can know. I mean, it's challenging.
And what I've learned too is like, your employees can't know because they're going to be like, oh, what am I going to do?
They're going to quit.
They're going to end up quitting. And what, in my opinion, what gets you that high multiple or even just sell your business in general, you need those employees in place because people don't want to buy a job.
No.
People want to buy a business that's already automated where they can start making money and they basically can scale it. So what would you say is like, I guess the main things because you've gone through it a couple times, what are the main things that made your company sellable and especially at a high multiple?
Systems, 100% systems, nothing less than systems. We had a system for every single thing that we did in our business. In my first company, we built a process for how are you going to do this? How are you going to answer the phone? How are you going to take the call? What you're going to say? What you're going to do? How are you going to write it down? There was a process for every single thing that we did in that business. And then when we started the second company, we just built processes. It was so easy to duplicate. Because once you've done it once and you've figured out all the hard shit, because you know as well as I do, there's a lot of hard learning curves, am I right? I mean, you're like, dude, I never expected this. Because I can tell you stories that made me just cry in business. But the biggest thing for me was systems. Put systems in place in your business, and that will change how you do business. Because if you have systems, someone can just come in and just jump in and go. And if you have employees come in, someone can come in and just jump in and go. But if it all depends on you, well, why do they want to buy you? They're not going to buy that. They're trying to buy a business that they can grow and build and those kinds of things. So when I sold the second one, They kept all the employees. They give them great jobs. They were able to really make this a phenomenal place for them. Then I've referred other owners to the same company for acquisition purposes because I know the value that this company brings to the table for anybody that they're going to acquire. But it's systems. It all boils around systems.
For yourself, you're in the plumbing business. We'll say you're doing over $1 million a year. The margins are tight in really any type of service-based business, especially plumbing. So we'll say you're making $100,000 or $200,000 a year, but you could sell the company and maybe you get a multiple six-figure exit. For me, you're constantly reinvesting all your capital back into the business to continue to grow it and grow it. Maybe your truck breaks down and it's $5,000 here and $12,000 here, and then you got to go find more employees and this and that. I feel like the businesses that I have sold or have the offers I've got, I look at it like that is the way that I'm actually going to build wealth in my life, is to get that
Sure.
massive check, that 7-figure check, rather than just making the $100,000, $300,000 a year. And a lot of that money is going to continuously be reinvested over and over and over
100%.
again.
And I've always reinvested. So when I built my companies, I built them on one premise. We were raising 6 kids between my wife and I. I had 4, she had 2. So we were raising 6 kids. So the most important thing to me was time. Time was more important than money because I could have made a lot more money. I could have just pushed. But what do I sacrifice to get more at that time in my life? Raising 6 kids. People are like, well, you should have done more. I'm like, well, let me ask you a question. Do you have 6 kids? Well, no. Well, you don't know what it's fucking like to have 6 kids. Because I know what it was like to grow up didn't know who my dad was. Never knew who my dad was until I was 18 years old. Now, I thought I was Mexican until I was 18 years old. I'm a white boy. Do I look like a Mexican? My brother and sister are both brown, dark hair, dark eyes. So when you look at a picture of us 3 together as babies, then there's these 2 brown kids, and then there's this little white boy. Where the hell does little white boy with blue eyes come from? So I always thought I took after my mom, who was white, and Reuben was Hispanic. So I grew up thinking that I was Mexican because we used to go to Corpus Christi, Texas, see my grandma Rios, see everybody else, and I'm like, my mom's friend said, hey, no one's ever told you, but I'm going to tell you this. Reuben's not your dad. There's another guy who's your dad. I'm like, who the fuck's my dad?
How old were you?
I was 18 years old.
Wow.
And she's like, this guy named Russell Thomas is your dad. And I knew the guy. He was a family friend. I knew him. He used to take us hiking. He used to do this. I never knew him as my dad. Not one time. The joke was always on me. Everybody else knew in the family except for the little white boy. So then I lost my identity. I'm like, fuck, I'm not even a Mexican no more. I mean, because I was so attached to that identity. But so sorry, I got off a tangent there. but it's just, so to me, family was important. Knowing that, but Reuben, even the Mexican, he was never around, ever. The last time I saw him, I was probably 7 years old. And Russell, I went and met him one time when I was 19 as my father. Hey, this is who I am, but I want nothing from you. I just want to see who you are. So I met him, then never saw him again. He died when he was 53 from brain cancer. So to me, family was the most important thing. It wasn't money. Money was not my driver. Time was my driver. I worked an average of 10 hours a week. I had great employees who kept the business going. My 10 hours were good 10 hours focused on very specific things in the business, the marketing, the advertising, the KPIs that you need to really watch. That's what I focus on. But I love the fact that I never missed a school event. I never missed a football game, a soccer game, a cheerleading event. I never missed anything because I built a business around time. And that's what I loved. Now here I am, all my kids are grown and gone. And I'm like, well, now I have lots of time. Now I'm going to build a fucking massive business, in the training and coaching empire, because to me, there's so many people who could benefit from what you and I both offer.
Yeah, and all the experiences that you're especially talking about as well. So you sold your last plumbing company and you get into the junk removal industry, which is local to obviously our area. So why did you get into junk removal, and how's that going right now?
Well, so we also owned a carpet cleaning company as well. So we owned that. We got rid of that. That's a business I'd never get into. I mean, for me, it was low ticket, everything low ticket. You guys, if you ever look at a carpet cleaning advertisement where they're like, $10 for $10 a room, $13 for a room. I'm like, you have a $40,000 piece of equipment sitting in your van. You got a $40,000 van pulling up to your house, and you want me to charge you only $10 per room? I'm like, seriously. So it was just a business I didn't like. For me, I didn't like it.
It's a lot of volume.
A lot of volume. So junk removal. So Kyle, my friend Kyle, was in junk removal. I'm like, well, shit, he's killing it in junk removal. But we also looked at margins. Where in plumbing, we know the national average in plumbing, from what I've read, is between 3 and 15% net profit margins in plumbing. And when you look at the averages, they're not giant margins. Your Kyle's like, well, fuck, we're doing 40, 50% net profit margins. I'm like, well, shit, brother, I want to do that. But what we also looked at what could we start that didn't require specialized licensing as well. Because in plumbing, it took me 20,000 hours of working just to get a license for my master license. So in junk removal, we realized that we can start this business low cost. So all I did was just reinvested money into that business. And then now my younger son, Josh, him and I became partners in this business, and he runs and owns the business. I just helped fund it, get it started, get it going. Our first month, we did $20,000, our first month of business. People tell you, oh, you can't do it. I'm like, no, you can do that. You really can. So that business is going well, except for when, your Facebook gets hacked or ads get hacked and shit like that. I mean, you've dealt with that. I mean, Josh's like, dude, this is killing me. This is like the 5th time someone has hacked my Facebook account and my ads, and they're spending money on my ads.
Yeah, and GMB goes down or it doesn't get verified, and that's why it's like you can't become reliant on one thing. You need all these different lead generation techniques. So you made a good point, right? So junk removal is a business where you don't need to get licenses or permits, and at least in our area, but a lot of areas you might need to, and New Jersey being the absolute worst. So this is good and bad. It's good for plumbing companies where you need to get all these things because it's a higher barrier to get in to where the market isn't going to be as saturated.
Right.
Now, junk removal, anybody can get a pickup truck and a trailer. So, there is pros and cons to that. Would you say, like, for all the people who are like, hey, the junk removal market is so saturated, you can't make money in this business, what do you have to say about that?
That's like the dumbest thing you could ever say, because think about this. 50% of business people go out of business just like that. 50% of those are going to go out of business because they don't have the will to stick it out when things get hard, when things get slow, to anticipate. I would say anticipate what the slow times are going to be so you know how to manage those versus having to go back and get a damn job. To me, there's never enough of a saturated market. It's just, how do you stand out? So think about this. I always tell people, like, what's different is always what gets noticed. So if you're different, you're always going to get noticed. But so then that's one factor. Now yours is just the most different junk removal truck that I've ever seen. It's not normal. It's pink. It matches your underwear. I mean, I'm just kidding, Kyle.
I don't wear underwear.
No, my man. But the point is, yours is pink. It's got a basketball goal on there. Your name is Slam Dunk and Junk. I mean, how unique and different is that? Have you ever seen anything so similar or just even close to that? You haven't. You just don't see it. So yours starting out was simple to do because you got a very unique name, very different look. But also, the number 2 factor was in what you think is a saturated market, spend some money on ads. Get people to know who you are. People will never do business with you almost always for one purpose. You know why that is? They don't know you exist. That's it. They just don't know you exist. They don't know what your services are. They don't even know that you offer these services. They're like, holy, even in plumbing, we saw this all the time. They're like, people would go to someone's house, they would say to us, oh, do you guys install toilets? I'm thinking to myself, you serious? My employees would come home, they come to the office, they ask if we install toilets. I'm like, well, of course we install toilets. We're a plumbing company. But people didn't know this. So we created a We Do More letter. A We Do More letter shows them a whole list of all of our services that we could give to a client when we walk into their house. Phenomenal thing. But in a saturated market, the problem you have is what we consider saturated is people don't market their businesses. So therefore they're slow and they think, well, there's just no work. There's tons of work. You're just not getting that work.
Something I've been noticing recently is, for me, I started the junk removal business, I feel like, at the perfect time because COVID was kind of there and, I didn't know if it was going to be good or bad for my business. It ended up being great. There was so much money flowing around. It 100% helped me scale my business. But now we're getting to those times where the word recession is coming around and people are scared to have money, right? Maybe people are getting laid off, that sort of thing. To where these junk removal companies who aren't putting the work in, aren't doing the right things to move the needle in their business, things are getting hard for them to where all they're thinking about right now is what's going to happen to me in the next couple of months. This business sucks. I can't find employees. I can't generate any leads. The market's saturated, to where just as many businesses that are getting in, just as many businesses are going to be getting out, trying to go back to work their 9-to-5 job or trying to start a different business, which they're going to end up facing the same exact problems.
They all have the same problems every single time. What they don't do is they don't market themselves at all. They live behind a computer, they maybe post a few social media posts, and they think that's going to work. The one thing I learned from you about social media posting is you got to do a lot of shit. And I know you do social media for specific junk removal companies, but you're doing 810 posts a month for these companies.
1,080.
1,080 posts a month. That's an enormous amount of posts. But what does that do? That drives all that business. It drives all the algorithms to you. It runs through Google. It runs through every part of that business because you're showing that business over and over and over and over. Because junk removal is mostly I'm going to say more like a 30% need-based versus 70% want-based. They don't have to have it removed. They can leave it there. So that's why I say, so it's a different kind of where plumbing is mostly need-based when it comes to service. So you're going to plumbing, they need the water heater fixed, they need hot water. They have a leak, they need it fixed. Your air conditioner is need as well. You're 106 degrees outside, my AC doesn't work. Need-based, where junk removal is want-based and need-based. When you sort of look at that split, you develop your marketing plan around knowing that it's need-based and want-based, but mostly want-based. So the key is how do I keep in front of people? How do I get in front of the right people?
How do you be relative? Yeah, and be in front of the right people.
And just
find your target market and push content in front of them without expecting to monetize it. People always go in, they start posting content. If I say, hey, Facebook was amazing for me to grow my junk removal business, they make 5 posts, they didn't get any calls, and they're like, hey, this doesn't work. And they lose that hope. Where I always tell my clients is you need to post every single day and not focus on the money. Just make sure that people know who you are. And this is a gem right here. This is going to be a clip. My mentor, I paid him $5,000, like I said, and I went on his yacht mastermind. He taught me the social media game, how to get into the education space, that sort of thing.
That's Austin Rutherford, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And my post started going viral, we'll say, and I started talking to all these people. And basically what ended up happening is I would talk to all these people. I'd try to tell them about my packages and what I could do for them, and nobody was buying anything that I had. And I gave him a call and I said, hey, man, this isn't working. I'm not selling anything. I'm not making any money, but I'm talking to everybody. And he said, Kyle, how long did you follow me and watch my content, tune into everything before you bought one thing from me? And I said, probably a year. He said, exactly. And then you ended up paying $5,000 and then another $5,000 and then $25,000, right? To where you can't, it's all about showing them that you exist. And just because, like, this is why I don't run Facebook ads for the most part. It depends what business. Is people are going to scroll down and they end up seeing your stuff and they might not need it, right? Because they're not typing in junk removal, we'll say.
Right.
To where it's all about the brand awareness, and you just want to show them, hey, this is what I do for a living, and basically they're going to give you a call whenever they need you. People just don't understand how that process works, and they think that you just post a junk removal ad and you're automatically like, oh my gosh, I've got a couch in my basement I need removed. That's not how it works. They'll give you a call whenever they need you, but who are they going to call?
Right.
The person who comes to mind the most.
A brand. They're always going to choose a brand over somebody else in almost all cases. If you look at there's a burger joint down the street and then there's McDonald's. Where are they always going to go? Almost always are going to go to what's been branded in their brains. They've seen it over and over and over. And like I said, so need-based businesses, you could get clients. I mean, if you started a plumbing company today, I could have you making money day one. That's simple to do. I mean, that is the easy thing to work because we're just going to put out specific marketing, advertising geared on that. And you don't have to have any reviews. People pay for it because they need it right now. So they're not thinking of like, oh my God, I have to find the best company. I just need someone to fix this right now who's available right this very moment. I think for you, Kyle, one thing you did differently is you branded your business well. You really set yourself apart by doing all the things that nobody else would do.
I was a marketing business for a junk removal company. Is what it was.
100%. Like with our junk removal company, Josh, I mean, I looked last night, he has every single page that's on Facebook, there he is. And then again, this morning I'm like, there he is. It's nonstop. And I've told him all along, I'm like, dude, this is what Kyle does. This is what works. But also he runs Facebook ads, he runs Google ads. But because sometimes when you do advertising, that sometimes people suck at doing advertising. They're just not very good. They don't get you results. And we've used two different people to do that. Now we're on the third, which seems to be doing really, really good for running these ads for us.
Google ads?
Google ads, yes.
Okay.
I mean, we do our own Facebook ads. I mean, that's...
So I actually have a marketing person coming on right after this, which you know who this person is. So, but I'm not going to say the name.
It's AM.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, a lot of people run ads and they have the expectation of, hey, I'm going to spend $500 and I'm going to get $1,500 in return, which they're going to get a return on their investment or their ad spend. are you guys getting a return on your ad spend? Are you guys making a profit on the front end? And what's kind of your process on that? Because I have my own thoughts, but most people that I know do not end up making profit on the front end of their advertising, we'll say, depending on what platform they're actually using. So, I always tell this story as well. Ty Lopez, I think the first business he was in was insurance, and he started doing like selling insurance whenever Google first started to become a thing. And whenever Google first started to become a thing, you could advertise on there. It was cheaper than ever to acquire
Right.
leads, where you were just guaranteed to make a profit. And then basically YouTube ads became a thing. And then he started selling education and that sort of thing and crushed it. But you don't see him do it anymore because it's so much harder to acquire these customers. And if you were to ask any Junkermill owner, will say, "Hey, what's your ad spend?" And they're like, "Oh, it's $2,500." Well, why are you not spending more?
Right.
Because if it was truthfully working, if you were actually getting a return on your ad spend and it made sense to you, you would be spending more and
You do
more and
more and
more and
more,
more money.
100%.
So what's your thoughts there with running ads and return on ad spend? Are you getting it? Are you breaking a profit
Well,
on the
you need to
front
track
end?
everything you're doing. So I always say this: have a number for, if you have an ad, you have a specific number for that ad only, because you need to know, okay, if I spend X amount of dollars, what did I make off of that? Because I say always listen to every single phone call that you take, and you want to know, did that turn into a client or did it not turn into a client? If it did turn into a client, how much money did we make from that client? So my son runs this part of it. I have nothing to do with it. I pretty much funded the business, stepped out of the business, we got it going, and I have nothing. But I can tell you this, that everything that we do, we make money off of. We don't spend enough to justify that, because he hasn't decided to really like scale this yet. I would say, if you can't run the jobs, don't run the ads. All you've done is wasted money, because that's what most people do. Is they'll run ads. They don't answer the phone. So I would say this: look, let's say you're running ads, and each phone call has a value of $50 a piece. That each call is costing you $50 per call. You miss 2 calls a day. What does that cost? $100 a day, $500 a week. That's on a 5-day work week. $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year. Now let's say your average ticket's $500, and you miss 2 calls a day. You potentially lost $1,000 a day, $5,000 a week, $20,000 a month, $240,000 a year, just because you didn't answer the phone. So what we see is people don't answer their phones because they're so busy they can't do it. I would say, don't run the ads if you can't answer the phone. Otherwise, you've just wasted money and you've lost more money than you've ever dreamed.
And even if they do answer the phone, like some clients where we'll manage their social media, obviously we want our churn to be very low. So we'll monitor the call recordings, that sort of thing. And I'll go listen to a call recording. Maybe they don't get a return on their spend with us, we'll say. And then I listen to their phone calls. And I'm like, did you ever expect to make money on this like lead? I mean, it was honestly terrible to even listen to, because they have no skills whatsoever. If you were to call all these junk removal companies or any business out here that's a small business, I would say at least 30 to 50% of these people are not going to answer right away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of these people will never give you a call back whatsoever.
Correct.
Other people will give you a call back, but I already called the next person.
100%.
And then you compare the phone skills between all of these different companies, and it's terrible. You know how I used to first answer the phone when I started Slam Dunk and Junk?
Can only imagine.
This is Kyle. And my family always used to give me shit because I'd say, it sounded like I was saying this Kyle, because I would say is so fast.
Right.
This Kyle, because I was using my personal line and my business line, and they'd be like, is this Slam Dunk and Junk? My phone skills were terrible to where maybe they're like, oh, who's this young kid? This company is probably going to come steal some stuff out of my house. Where I started trying to replicate exactly what the franchises were doing. So if you call a franchise that has a trained call center and you listen to the calls, it's so professional. Something I really like about you is the energy that you bring to the table. Your energy's here, my energy's here, right? How do I get that energy way up there? And when you're selling on the phone or even in person, you're going to start seeing your close rates, your booking rates start to go up when you have that positive energy, when you're not a robot, for example, or just when you have the correct phone skills. And so many people, even if they answer the phone, doesn't mean that they're going to book anything.
No.
You need to know how to answer the phones, and you need to be funny, and you need to be happy to talk to that person. And Andy Elliott, you said that his whole team greeted you at the door.
Oh my God, it was the most amazing thing in the world. So my son, because he knows I have a low tolerance for people's ignorance. He's like, Dad, I hope you don't punch him in the face. Because all people see sometimes is they see one side of somebody. When we got down to Andy Elliott's company, my wife and I, we're walking up towards the front door. You got 9 guys walked out of that front door. They're just hugging us. All these guys are just, people are leaving their offices to come over there and hug us and greet us and hug us. We don't know any of these people. We've never met them before. And then when we met with Andy, so we had, paid for 2 hours of his time. That's what I wanted. He gave us 5 hours of his undivided attention. No phone, nothing else but undivided attention. But he was the kindest, most caring, loving, genuine person. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing.
So say
the experience.
Yeah, experience. So say he gave you 120 minutes. He gave you 2 hours. Nobody greeted you at the door. Straight money play. Come in. Okay, it's 2 hours, man. Nice to meet you. I'll see you later. But he gave you more than what you paid for, which in return is going to increase the lifetime value of you as a customer, because you were like, this is awesome. I spent this and this was the value that I got in return. And I didn't even expect that. You are going to end up spending more money with that business, with that person, to where people need to put that nurture in their own company. And so many people are so focused on what they do today when you need to look at the long-term relationship of that customer.
Sure.
And where we made a lot of money with junk removal was having those customers that had a $40,000 lifetime value in a given 12 months when they're focused on the customer that's going to pay them $200 today. They were never focusing on the long term.
On the long
whatsoever.
term, right. You have to focus on the long term. If you don't focus on the long term, you lose so many things. So we always look. So when I go back to those numbers, remember those numbers I was sharing you? What if your numbers were now a lifetime value of, let's say, $10,000, and you missed 2 calls a day? That's $20,000 a day you just lost in potential revenue over, let's say your lifetime value is over a 10-year period, or people own a home for around 10 years. So that's $10,000 a day, or $20,000 a day. That's you add that up. $100,000 a week, $400,000 a month over that you're going to lose over a 10-year period from lifetime value. But we go back to everything's easy to do. As Jim Rohn used to say this, he said, everything's easy to do, but it's also easy not to do. Answering the phone is one of the most important things in the world. Positive sense of urgency is what I tell people. Always a positive sense of urgency, because you're so excited they called your company, because they could have called somebody else. It's always, thank you for calling. We'll use your company. Thank you for calling Slam Dunk and Junk. This is Kyle. How may I help you today? Oh, Kyle, hey, I got all this junk here. Oh, I'm so sorry you got all that junk. But we definitely called the right place. We always thank them. We show them empathy, and we assure them that they called the right place. Those 3 things are number 1 things. We always with a positive attitude. Smiling, you're excited. We used to call 20 companies every year. We'd just sort of price shop people. We just want to see where everybody is. Out of the 20 who are advertising, 15 wouldn't answer. I'm like, what the fuck? Seriously? You spent all this money on everything and you didn't answer your phone? Remember we talked about systems? A system in place to make sure your phone is answered. If your office can't answer the phone, it's going to roll over to a company who can answer the phone for you. Systems. The phone is your number 1 resource in any service business. If you don't answer it, you're out of business.
So we've launched, like with education, obviously, we've launched around 300 people to start their junk removal businesses. And one day, there was at a time, towards the beginning stage where people were like, yeah, I'm just not getting any leads. It's just not working out. I'm not getting any leads. And I said, I was trying to figure out what it is, because it can be many different things, but I'm always questioning, hey, are they doing what they need to be doing to actually grow their business?
Right.
I made the decision one day, hey, I'm going to cold call a couple of these companies. And I used one of my buddy's phone lines that had California area code. You know how many people answered out of 5? 1. One person answered. These are the same 4 people or the same 5 people that are all complaining about leads. How many other people are they doing that to? And a lot of companies are going to do this even when they're running ads. And what is it, a $50 phone call, a $80 phone call, a $100 phone call? And you just lose money over and over and over again.
You don't even know you're losing
and it's so hard to catch up.
Oh, I was working with a guy, and I listened to all of his company's phone calls. And a business guys and do a business coaching with. And I listened, after I got through 12, I'm like, dude, first of all, 6 weren't even answered. These were answered so badly. And then they're telling them that they can't do the stuff. I'm like, this is why you're losing money right here. This one thing is why you're losing money, is because your phone is either not being answered or is being answered poorly. So I always says, how you answer the phone sets the stage for the experience you'll have with the client. If they're excited that you're coming and your guys show up excited to be there, it's going to make a huge difference for you.
So, you're obviously in the junk removal space. I am as well. bidding jobs over the phone is going to lower your average ticket price because you're competing against everybody else because they could just pick up the phone and call everybody else. We would bid most of the jobs in person. A lot of these people watching, when I say, hey, I got a $500 average ticket and they have a $250 average ticket, they don't know how to increase that when bidding jobs in person rather than the phone is going to increase that a tad bit, but also showing up with that nurture mentality of just being happy to be there and, building
Creating
that
the connection.
building
You're
that
connecting with
relationship.
them.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're actually connecting with them. Doing those things is slowly going to start increasing your average ticket price. And if you can't do it yourself and then you hire employees to do it for you and they can't bring that energy with them, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse.
And you know what the worst part is with your employees, it's your fault as the owner. It's your fault as the leader of the company. We always say three things. Does the employee know what's expected of them? Have they been trained to do what's expected of them? And are they willing to do what's expected of them? If you haven't done 1 and 2, then you can't blame them for number 3. Because number 1 is, do they know? Do they know how you want? So we talk about systems and processes. We had a process for everything that you did in regards to installing a water heater, installing this, installing that, how you talk to a client, what you look for. As soon as you get out of the van, you're walking up, you're scanning the property, you're looking for things that you can create a connection with. There was always a process. The process is what makes the difference.
Entrepreneurs always complain about their employees. I hear a lot of people complain about their employees, and I've done it, in the past.
Everybody who's been in business has done it. They've had employees.
Did this.
Yes.
And then the person that maybe is further than me, they're like, what, it's not about them. They immediately forget about the employees, and they're like, what are you doing that is letting that go on, right? Where becoming a leader is difficult in so many different levels, and you keep on having, especially as you scale past the $1 million a year mark, you have to be there constantly to be able to guide these people and guide them. And if they're not doing what needs to be done, you have to address it and coach them constantly and constantly. And a lot of people just lack that leadership, which is another reason why they have a lot of issues with their employees. Yeah, no training whatsoever.
So you look at Andy Elliott. One thing I love about Andy Elliott, his company, he built a company to 120 million a year in 3 years, a training company. That's pretty phenomenal.
That's 300,000 people, right? Or 500,000?
Right, 300,000 that he trains. And I've been on his training goals. So the one thing he teaches is training. How much worse off is your company if they're untrained versus those who are trained? Take the time to train. Well, we don't have time to train our employees. But yet you have time to lose money? Come on, seriously, dude. Take the time to train your employees to be better. You can talk to many of the guys that who have worked for me, who actually stuck with me. Because I had a low tolerance for ignorance. Either you do the work, you don't do the work. We have a high standard. And you look at like one guy the other day, he's like, Eric, I learned so much from you. I could not believe the amount of stuff I learned from you, working under you, just from this and this and this and every aspect of what we did. Because we always trained. We're always training. Everything's a training opportunity. You know why you listen to phone calls? Why you have them recorded so you can train. You tell your office staff, say, hey, listen to this phone call. Tell me what you think about this. Oh, yeah, maybe I could have done better.
Yeah, you can see what you did right. You can see what you did wrong.
And what you can do better.
Here's another thing, right? I've been doing this podcast thing for a while now, and it's almost scary. It almost makes me not want to watch any replays to see what I did wrong when you have to do these things, because then you can see what's going to make you look better, what's going to maybe create more viral clips, what's going to create a better conversation, to where it's like you have to do the things that you don't want to do to get in there to figure out where you're lacking. Recently, I tracked all the sales calls that we had. I broke down my KPIs, which I should have been doing daily, but I ended up not doing it daily. I did it after 90 days. So I went back, looked at all this data, and I had multiple, I had a team of 13 team members, right? So I became extremely comfortable to where everyone was doing everything for me, to where I thought that everyone was firing on all cylinders. We were doing so good, right? I saw the bank account growing. I saw us making more money. And then when I broke down the numbers, we lost $200,000 just by simple mistakes that could have been fixed. And if I noticed those things beforehand, if I noticed that I should have been the one closing all the calls, then that's what I should have done, right? And I would have made an additional $200,000. You just don't know what you don't know.
Until you know more.
Exactly.
And the only way you know it is by tracking and listening and paying attention to those simple things. It makes all the difference in the world. Because you might have an employee who's doing all those things, but they don't want to share it because they're scared to share it. So maybe it reflects on them. So
if I ask my clients, if I say, hey, is anybody willing to give me your calls just your call recording, so I can go through them and basically try to help you guys figure out what's going to be a good phone call, what's going to be a bad phone call, what you're doing right and wrong. Out of 300 people, how many people gave me the recordings?
Probably zero.
Zero.
I can imagine zero.
Zero. Nobody replied.
Because they're afraid of being held accountable. They're afraid of looking stupid. They're afraid of feeling stupid. So Steve Siebold, we've talked about Steve Siebold before. He's one of my favorite authors, and he talks about mental toughness, and that's his number one thing. But I took a class by him on approval addiction. You look at 98% of the people in the world are addicted to the approval of other people. They're so scared of what other people think, therefore they don't do anything. They don't take action. You have the anomalies, and he rated them between They tested 100,000 business professionals, and it was literally a 98% level who was addicted to the approval of other to some level. The level is between 1 and 7, 7 being the worst. Your anomalies are going to be your Gary Vaynerchuk, your Tony Robbins, but even then, people still have some where they care what other people think. They say, "Well, I don't care what anybody thinks." In some way, you do it just a little bit. Maybe it's very small, but most people they were going to range at a 5 to a 7, and that's why.
Here's something that's crazy is I said, I don't care what anybody think of me, right? That's what I said. And I saw this video about Cody Sanchez. She's like in private equity, that sort of thing, buys and sells businesses. And she said that if she was to hire an owner operator, she's going to have that person take a personality test to see what matches up with a good operator for that business. So, when I did, I go and take a personality test. I've never done this before, just to see what I was. I ended up being an executor.
So you're special.
But something that ended up, one of my weaknesses was I care too much about what people think of me. When I was the same guy who was saying that I didn't care.
But once again, that goes back to what Steve Siebold says, is that you wouldn't think that you are addicted to the approval of other people, but you are in some way, shape, or form. And that's what's held me back for so long. I even told Andy Elliott, I said, "Dude, I saw you doing a podcast with a guy. He's super successful. The guy's just phenomenal." He goes, "Dude, your life is so much better than his life. You and your wife's life is." But all we see is what they're doing. We don't really see the back end. There's always the back end that you don't see. You see the facade that everybody shows you. You don't see the real life. With my life, what you see is what you get. I mean, but you still don't see what happens behind the scenes.
And with social media, it's, a lot of it is people are going to avoid talking about those negative things. People will still touch on it, but people aren't, and maybe it doesn't get as many views, it doesn't get as much attention, but people, when they look at your success, they look at my success on a chart, it's through the roof when people don't know how many times it goes down.
They don't know the tears you shed, the fears you face. They're like, your payroll's due that week, and you only have $2,000 in the bank. You're like, fuck, how am I going to make this payroll? I mean, I know what that's like to just not know how you're going to make payroll that week. And it's a real, when you're in business, sometimes if you don't do it intelligently, you can put yourself in a hole pretty fast. I always say start slow to go fast. Don't go into debt. Minimize your debt, minimize your expenses. I mean, just keep things simple, all because for one purpose. Keep it to where you can grow profitably. I'd rather see you grow slow versus grow fast, because people who grow fast tend to, in most cases, go out of business because they just took on too much, way too fast. They didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah, it's, when I was growing my education company, we blew up overnight.
Just like that you did, dude.
1,500 book calls in 2 weeks, and I had no infrastructure to even make that money, where we lost probably millions of dollars.
Oh, 100% you did.
But
you still made millions.
Right.
Come on now. You did, brother.
But so we're coming up on the time here, so we're getting ready to wrap up. But where can people find you, and as well as give the best advice that you could give to anyone, who's maybe looking to start that business to get to the next level?
So you can find me on thewinninglifegroup.com. That's thewinninglifegroup.com. My advice to you is this, is if you don't know how to do it, find a mentor. Find someone who's going to help you shorten your learning curve, because the learning curve is the most painful thing that you're going to face if you go into business. I help people start service businesses. I love the service business industry. There's nothing more exciting than that. If you want to go into business, it's simple to do, but it's also challenging to do. What if someone could show you how to do it in a much simpler way? I mean, Kyle, if I went to Jungle Mill, you're the first person I'd call. You know why? Because I know you have done it over and over and over and over and over. To me, all service businesses have the same foundational principles. I mean, I started a Jungle Mill game, never been in it, but it was easy for me because I'd already started other businesses. It's the same business foundations. So for me, is this: nothing gets better until you get better. If you want to have a better life, make the choice to have a better life and take a chance on yourself. And when's the time, Kyle? What does the shirt say? When's the time?
Right now.
The time is now. The time is always now. You can't wait until it's perfect because it's never going to be perfect.
I love it, man. Well, I really appreciate everything that you've done for me and coming on the podcast, and look
Dude,
forward to
so
seeing where you're
grateful.
going to go.
Well, we're going to have you on my podcast here real soon.
I'm ready. We're going
It's going to be
raw.
crazy, though,
We're
dude. It's
going
going to be
raw.
crazy. We might even shower you with like water, shaving cream. Who knows what's going to happen on that podcast.
Perfect. I'm ready. I'm
All right,
excited.
bud.
See you guys on the next one.